Well, I appreciate Jim asking me to do this today. I think I shared with him as soon as we met that I have a heart for being in the community. Part of my ministry philosophy comes from how I started out in ministry, and I started out in ministry in 2017 with First Priority. And since Jim brought that up, I do want to extend an invitation. Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock at Trinity Baptist Church in Orange, we have a man from First Priority for Southeast Texas coming to just speak to any pastors who want to come and be there and be a part of that about First Priority, what the mission is, kind of lay the groundwork for how we go about expanding First Priority down into this area where it currently does not exist. I'm a huge fan of First Priority because it is a boots on the ground type of ministry. It is focused on discipling young people to go and be missionaries in their mission. Right? I tell kids all the time that whether they realize it or not, they are a missionary. We're all called to do that, right? We're all called to go and make disciples, but we have to figure out where we're called to do that. Well, for students, they're spending 40 plus hours a week on their school campus, right? If they're an athlete or band or something else, they're spending even more hours on those school campuses. And so if they're a follower of Christ, that is where they are called to reach disciples. But one of the things that I saw growing up, and one of the things that I realized very early on when I got involved with First Priority, is so many young people aren't doing that, so many adult people aren't doing that because they don't know how to do it, right? Pastors for years have stood in the pulpit and said, go make disciples, and we've never taught them how to do it, right? So people don't do it because they don't know what to say, they don't know how to say it, they're afraid of saying the wrong thing, right? Maybe they're not very good at memorizing scripture, and so I can't go share the gospel with somebody because I don't know what verse to say or where the verse, I may know the verse, but I don't know where it's at. And so First Priority is focused on putting people on campuses as campus coaches to help facilitate a student-led organization, much like FCA, but even more reliant on the students who are leading it to train other students how to share the gospel with those other students, because a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid is way more likely to listen to another 12, 13, or 14-year-old kid share the gospel than they are to somebody like me, right? Because even though I don't think I'm old, especially when I'm at church on Sunday surrounded by the majority of my congregation, for those kids, I'm an old man. I've forgotten what it's like to be their age, or they think they're dealing with things that I never had to deal with, right? So Wednesday afternoon, 2 o'clock at Trinity Baptist Church in Orange. If you want to hear more about First Priority, if you want to get in on the ground floor of what we're going to be trying to do in the community here in the Southeast Texas region, I'd love to have you come and join us for that. But like I said, with my ministry experience starting there, it's really shaped how I do ministry even as a pastor. I do not sit in my office all week long working on things. I honestly do most of my sermon prep at night at home, because during the day I'm trying to be as out and about in the community as I can be. Now, one thing you got to understand is, if you don't already understand it, is you can't do it yourself. I can't tell you the number of people that I've come in contact with in the community back in Tennessee and here who when I start talking to them and I invite them to church and I'm telling them about the church, the response is, well, of course you're going to tell me that. You're a pastor, it's your job, right? That's your job. And so immediately they kind of discount what it is that I have to say because, well, you're protecting your job, right? So it's important, any kind of community involvement that you're going to have, you have to have church members on board, right? You've got to get people out of the seats and into the streets. It's absolutely imperative. Because what we are seeing today is the old model of if you build it, they will come, especially in regards to church, isn't working. It's not working. Now for your larger churches, your 500 plus member churches who have the bigger facility and they've got the things going on constantly, they're seeing people come on a regular basis, right? They're having things that are able to get people in. But you're not seeing that translated into new members, right? It's like with our fall festivals. How many of you do a fall festival? Okay. How many of you have seen new members because of a fall festival in the last 5 years? Decent number, a couple here and there.
We got about 5, 10 families.
5 or 10 families? Okay. I know There was a church that I went to in Tennessee that quit doing their fall festival. Just axed it completely. And I asked why they had stopped doing it, and the response was, well, we're not seeing new members from doing this, so there's no return on the investment that we're putting in, and so we're just not going to do it at all. The conversation I had with that pastor is that, well, your mindset's a little bit off here, right? You should do those kind of things because it does give you an opportunity to speak to members of the community, right? It is an outreach event, but you should just be looking at it as an outreach event. Because what I've seen most families do these days is they figure out which churches have their fall festival and what nights they're doing them on, right? And so this week they're going to this one, and you know, if there's 2 or 3 tonight, they're going to hit 2 or 3 tonight, and they're going to go hit these tomorrow and these tomorrow, and that way on Halloween they don't even have to go trick or treating because they've got all the candy they can eat, right? Same things happen a lot with Vacation Bible School. Right? Parents are using Vacation Bible School during the summer as a summer-long nanny program to get their kids out of the house. I knew kids in Tennessee who went to 7 different Vacation Bible Schools during the summer because their mom said, you know what, I'm not going to have the kids cooped up in the house, so I'm going to figure out what the Vacation Bible School schedule is, and I'm going to send my kids. And what happened is by the end of the summer, those kids probably could have taught Vacation Bible School better than the teachers at the church that they were at the end because they had seen it all through the year. But we've got to look at reaching people in a little bit of a different mindset than what we had before. The gospel hasn't changed, the mission hasn't changed, what we're called to do hasn't changed, but the people that we're trying to reach with that gospel have changed, right? The world is moving at such a fast pace now, it's nonstop, you know that, right? We got our cell phones, we got our tablets, kids are always on something electronic. Right? And so with the world moving at the pace that it's moving, and with the, let's be honest, the distrust that there is for churches that has really been on the rise the past few years because of the things that have been happening, the things that have been coming to light as far as sexual abuse within churches and how it's been hidden and covered up in different places. There's a big level of distrust. So how do we, as the church, get past that with the people that we're trying to reach? And the answer is that we've got to meet them where they are. We've got to meet them where they are, right? Evangelism has to happen where the people are, right? I've started for about 1.5 years now. I've had this mindset when I'm standing in the pulpit on Sunday, and look, I grew up in Southeast Texas with hellfire and brimstone preachers every Sunday, right? Who got up there, and every week they were preaching to the lost, which was great. But the majority of the people sitting in the sanctuary on Sunday morning were Christians who needed to be discipled and needed to grow in their faith, and that wasn't happening. That was my experience. Right? By the time I got out of high school, I had no clue what it meant for me to go and make disciples. How was I supposed to go and evangelize other people? Because all I heard growing up was memorize scripture verse and be in church on Sunday and invite somebody to church, but I had no clue what to do. Right? And so my mindset on Sundays has been that when I stand in the pulpit, I should have the assumption that the majority of the people I'm speaking to are already believers, and how do I stand here and help them grow in their walk with Christ? How do I equip them so that they can go out during the week and share the gospel with the people they come in contact with? How do I challenge them to go out and do that during the week? And so that's been my mindset, and I've had pastors who have argued with me about it and told me that that's the completely wrong thing to think, that I need to be standing there preaching to the lost every Sunday, and because if I'm not doing that, how are they going to hear the gospel? And my response is, well, if I'm preaching scripture, I'm preaching truth, it doesn't matter if I'm addressing the saved members of my congregation or not, they're still hearing the gospel, which should lead, if the Holy Spirit is working on them, to further conversations, right? But how do we reach those people who aren't coming? How do we make those connections with the ones who aren't coming in the door on Sunday or Wednesday to see what we have going on? We have to go out. Jim mentioned that when I first got here, there had been a church fire, and it happened within the first couple of weeks of me getting to Orange. Saw it on Facebook, and I saw that they were going to be having a prayer vigil just a couple nights after the fire happened. And so I don't even remember how it came across my feed, but I saw that and I said, I need to go and be a part of this. And so I showed up 6 o'clock in the evening, it's dark, it's raining, and showed up, and what I walked into was a situation where I was the only white face in the crowd. This was a black church in our area that had burned. I was the only white face in the crowd. Now I can tell you what that did for me is it gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of people, because everybody who was there wanted to come over and find out why I was there. Who are you? What are you doing here? You know, and so that gave me an opportunity to number one, meet a lot of the black pastors in our community, because they were all there, to meet a lot of the church members from that church and from several others, and just have conversations with them. I heard something that night that broke my heart. And what I heard from the pastor of that church was these words. He said, "Thank you for coming." "How long have you been here?" I said, "I've been here for about 2 weeks." And that blew his mind. He said, "We're glad you're here." He says, "There's pastors who've been in this area for 30 years that would never show up to something like this." And that broke my heart. I mean, just absolutely wrecked me to hear it. But what that night did is that started an opportunity of building relationships between me and some of the pastors in the area from some of the local black churches. I got invited to a service that they had about a month later. There was a benefit service for that church to raise funds for them. Got invited to go and be there and to be a part of the service, which was absolutely incredible. But the return from that, from just showing up to that prayer, right, is now we're doing a Thursday night men's discipleship study at Trinity Baptist Church. And about half of the guys who are coming are guys from some of the black churches in the community. Now, do I ever expect those guys to come and join Trinity Baptist Church? No. That's not what I'm doing it for, right? But what I love seeing, in addition to them being there, is that the men from my church are getting to meet these guys, and they're building relationships with these guys. And my vision is that this is going to lead to us coming together with some of these churches to actually go out in the community and reach some of those people who aren't going to come through the doors. It's led to us being able to be involved with an organization in Orange called Iron Sharpens Iron. Iron Sharpens Iron, which is, again, it's a group of black men in the community who have a desire to reach young black men before they go off in the hopeless cycle of things that we've seen for so many years. And so me and several men from church have started showing up to the meetings that they have, right? And not a lot of people coming with me, right? There's a lot of people who aren't going to go and do something like that because that's way too far out of their comfort zone. But even just a couple of people showing up in a place where they wouldn't normally go has started building bridges that were never there before in Orange, right? Or that had been taken for granted there in Orange. I had a young man come by the church a few weeks back to meet me. He came by and introduced himself to me, and I was standing out front with their church steward. He says, "Hey, I'm looking for the pastor here." So I said, "Well, that's me." I said, "What can I do for you?" He says, "I just wanted to come by and say hello and introduce myself." He said, "My dad pastors one of the black churches in town, and him and some of the other guys have been telling me about this stupid white guy who's too young to know that there's parts of this town he doesn't need to go to after dark. And he keeps showing up anyways." He said, "I just wanted to come by and say hello and say thank you, because those guys have a level of hope about things in this community that they haven't had for a long time." Right? And all it took to start that was showing up in a part of the community that a lot of us don't even think about showing up to. Right? That a lot of us aren't going to step foot in because either that's not where our people are at, right? Or we think, well, those pastors have got that, they'll take care of it, right? So you start by going out and building some of those relationships in the community, right? How do we do that outside of even some of the churches, right? There's low-hanging fruit like Jim was talking about. One of the things that we did in Tennessee that was very productive and very easy to do, right, is going to schools around your church and building partnerships with them, right? What do I mean by building partnerships with them? We actually went to some of the schools in Murray County, Tennessee, and we signed a pledge with those schools stating that we as a church wanted to be there to support them, right? What did that mean? How did we support them? Well, we did the simple things, right? Every once in a while we'd bring breakfast for the teachers and the administrators, right? If the school said that they needed some things during flu season, they need Kleenexes and hand sanitizer and all the other stuff, right? Well, okay, hey church, we need to collect some of this stuff so we can get it to school, right? Those aren't very hard, complex things for us to do, but even those things made the administrators of those schools start to realize that they weren't doing things on their own, right? They weren't fighting to educate these kids with no support, right? Some of the other things that we did, and this part is maybe a little harder and a lot less comfortable to do, is we got calls saying, hey, we've got state testing coming up, and we don't have enough proctors. Do you have anybody who's willing to just come sit in the classroom for 5 hours? They can't do anything other than sit there. Can't bring a book, can't bring your phone, can't do anything. You just have to sit there, but we've got to have people in the classroom. Is there anybody willing to do that? So we got some people who were willing to do that and went into the school and said, hey, we're here to help. Right? Other than taking some time, that was an investment that didn't cost us anything. And for the administrators and the teachers of those school campuses, it meant the world to them. It meant the world to them. And what we started to see from those little things is when things happened at the school and they needed somebody for the kids to talk to, right? We know the kids don't want to talk to the school counselor, because if they talk to the school counselor, then, you know, they're scared to do it, kind of like, military guys. They don't want to go see anybody that can ruin their career. They started calling some pastors in the area who had made those partnership agreements with them. Hey, we just had a student pass away, and our kids are struggling. Can you just come and be on the campus? We're going to let them know you're here. Can you just be here in case any of them want to come talk to you instead of talking to one of the counselors or one of the administrators? Right? And we saw doors start to open and access be granted to these schools that we had never seen before. Right? Just from the simple act of saying, hey, we want to sign a pledge to you that we're going to support you. Right? And so then what we started to see is at this time I was also working at Chick-fil-A in Tennessee, and I was the night manager, and kids would come in all the time, and they'd come in with their families, and kids would start introducing their parents to me, because the kids knew who I was because I'd been on campus so much of that. Hey, this is Pastor Kevin, and the parents were going, hey, was your church the one that was helping do X, Y, or Z? Right? Now again, this is not something that I encourage you to do, saying it's guaranteed to put butts in seats, right? I'm not saying it's going to make your membership double in 6 months, right? But what it is it starts showing the people in your community that you're willing to come to them, that you're willing to care for them, and you start building relationships. Because with the world moving as fast as it's moving today, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you've got to be willing to invest time, especially today, for people to see that. When you hear statements like, this generation is unreachable, this generation doesn't care, you can't talk to them, what I see out of the young generation, especially today, is they're looking for somebody who's going to be honest with them, who's going to be truthful with them, but somebody who is going to be willing to invest in them and care for them. And not care if they get anything in return out. That's where I start to see young people responding in this current generation. And I'll tell you, when they know that you care, when they can look at you and go, oh, you do care about me, you do. The amount of response that you'll start getting from them is incredible, right? Some of the other ways that we can connect in our communities is, who does Disciple Now weekends? Okay? Disciple Now weekends are great, but in the past, it's all been, again, let's bring the kids in, right? We'll have, 3 or 4 services throughout the weekend, and then they'll go to their home group and do whatever there. Try taking your Disciple Now weekend, and at some point during that weekend, do a community service event with your kids. Whether it's going and doing cleanup at elderly people's houses, whether it's going and doing some cleanup on a school campus, whatever it is. Trust me, the opportunities for community service is out there, right? But you take those kids and you make part of the weekend about going and serving, right? Going and taking care of the community that you live in. And again, what it starts to show people is, hey, they actually do care. They're not just in it to try and get more members and not in it just to try to get their offerings up. They actually do care about what's going on in the community. They do care about the people who live here, and residing, right? It's so much about building relationships there, right? So much about building relationships there. Let me encourage you guys, encourage your youth pastors to be out in the community. I had a youth pastor that I was trying to get involved in First Calvary back in Tennessee, and I just needed him 1 day a week. 1 day a week for about an hour and a half. But it was in the middle of office hours. And his senior pastor's response was, no, he needs to be in his office during church office hours. My question to him was, how many of his students come to see him during office hours while school's in session? None, right? Because where are those kids at? They're in school. So if I've got an opportunity for your youth pastor to go and be where students are, and that's the demographic that he's been charged with reaching, is he doing more good sitting in his office or being out where the students are at? Right? Encourage your youth pastors to get out of the office and get out there where their students are at. Right? Youth pastors love it when they show up on a school campus and their students come to them and start introducing them to their friends. It's incredible. Right? Because a lot of times at church they'll act like they don't even know the youth pastor. But when your kids know that you care, they're excited to share that with the kids that they know, and they want to make that introduction. Right? If Jesus had done nothing but teach in the tabernacle, teach in the temple, the impact of his ministry would not have been anywhere near what it was. But what did we see out of Jesus time and time again? We saw him going and meeting people where they were at, right? He met the woman at the well there, right? Zacchaeus. He didn't say, hey, Zacchaeus, come over here and meet me. What did he tell Zacchaeus? He said, I'm coming to your house, right? He went to where people were, and that's the example that he set for us. That's the example that we need to follow, right? I have been having a lot of fun making my church members I call it get uncomfortable for Jesus, right? Because so many church members think that as long as they show up to church on Sunday and Wednesday and throw their offering in the plate, maybe help out with some kind of special event that the church has, they're good. But I've been pushing them to start doing more. We started doing a Bible study every other week at one of the retirement villages there in Orange. And it started out, the first week it was me and my 9-year-old son. And then the next time we did it, there was one lady from the church. And then a few weeks later, we had a couple more. This past week, when we were there, I had 4 people from my church show up, and we had 3 people from another church in town who showed up to come and help, because we got a lady to come and play. There was an organ that one of the couples that lives there had donated to the place. And we found this lady who was willing to come play it for them. So she started coming. Well, now she's inviting friends from the church to come and be a part of it. And so when we had this Bible study 2 weeks ago, there were 10 people from the retirement place, residents, who came, and we had 9 church members from the community over there. It was incredible. And watching the smiles and the joy on the face of the people that live there, because people were willing to take some time to come see them, not people that are relatives, not people that work there or have to be there, but people who want to come and be in their presence, is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. I love that my 9-year-old son wants to go and do those things with me, right? And the reason I love it is because he walks through the door, and there's 2 ladies there who they don't pay a lot of attention to Bible study, but he comes in and he brings coloring books and colors and crafts, and he sits down with those 2 ladies at one of the tables in the back of the room, and that's what they do while we do the Bible study. And they talk with him, and he talks with them, and they smile from start to finish, because there's somebody who is taking time to come and love on them where they're at, right? The relationship building is not hard. You just have to be willing to make the effort, right? The low-hanging fruit is there in your community, right? But you got to be willing to look for it. You got to be willing to step out. You can't do it on your own, right? If I tried to do everything that we want to do in Orange on my own, I'd be thoroughly exhausted, right? And there's pastors that try that, right? And what happens is they end up getting burnt out, right? But if you can get a few members of your church to buy into this idea that go and make disciples means that we have to actually go, not just sit here in the church, and get them invested in it, right? what you're going to see is you're going to start having an impact in your community that maybe you haven't been able to see in a few years, right? You're going to start reaching some community areas that you've never even thought about reaching before. And here's where it gets amazing. Again, I go invite somebody to church, they're like, you're the pastor, you have to do that. When one of my church members goes and is talking to somebody and says, hey, let me tell you about what's going on at Trinity Baptist Church. Let me tell you about why I'm excited to be a member of this church. That's what people start listening to, right? When a church member says, hey, come visit us Sunday. And not only come visit us Sunday, but I'm going to be standing out in the foyer waiting for you. People respond to that. They want people to take the time to come to where they are and just love on them. And we can do that. It's not hard. Maybe it means we have to step outside of what we've done before and look at things a little bit different than we've done before. But if you're willing to do it, you're going to be able to start reaching some of that low-hanging fruit. You're going to start seeing some differences, right? I wanted to share one thing with you. I don't know, I'm hoping everybody's familiar with Lifeway research, but there's some really good statistics on here. October of last year, they put an article out, and this was the analysis of the 2024 annual church profile. And there's some things in there that weren't great, talking about the decline of membership in Southern Baptist churches, talking about where we are seeing growth. One of the things that I did see is Southern Baptist churches founded between 1950 and 1999 are the most likely to be declining by more than 10% since 2019. Those founded before 1900 are the most likely to be plateaued, with plus or minus 10% of their 2019 membership. Churches in urban areas, places with a population of 50,000 or more, are the most likely to be on either extreme, either growing or shrinking, right? It does say urban Southern Baptist churches are the most likely to be growing, 26% growth, and declining, 45%. Those in rural areas are the most likely to be plateaued, right? And it breaks it down into regions, but one of the things that I also saw in this study is that if you have a church that averages 50 members or less, right, you are falling into that category of most likely decline. Now, part of that is because a lot of those churches who have those small membership bases are going to be elderly congregations for the most part, and as they start passing away, what happens is there's nobody coming up and filling those spots that they're leaving, right? You show the churches with 500 or more members are most likely going to be continuing to grow, right? Now, I don't necessarily think that guarantees that those large churches are the ones who are preaching the gospel the way it ought to be preached, right? Some of those are churches that are tickling ears and tell people what they want to hear. But your larger churches are the ones who oftentimes have more of those going out into the community type events and outreach events. Why is that? Because a lot of these smaller churches, especially the ones that have elder congregations, have seen that they're shrinking. And instead of saying, hey, we need to be going out and reaching our communities, we need to be going out and making an impact in the community that we live in, that's grown up around us, that is our home, a lot of them are going into this protectionist mindset, right? Because they see everything that's out there just like the rest of us. And so they see what's going on in some of these other churches, and they see the praise and worship versus singing the old hymns, and they see the noise and all this stuff. And the other thing they see is that in some of these larger churches, the elder congregations are being completely left behind. They're being completely forgotten. I know of churches where pastors have come in and basically looked at the elder congregation and said, you've had your time, now get out of the way. Right? And so these smaller churches are in this protectionist mindset. We've got to protect against anything like that. And what happens is when you go into that protectionist mindset, you're not reaching anybody. Right? Nobody's going to feel welcome. You may get somebody to stumble through the door on accident, but they're not going to feel like they belong. And so they're going to turn around and go somewhere else. So your larger churches that are probably going to have younger congregations, they're going to have families, they're going to have more of the things going on to bring those people in. They're also going to be the ones who are focused more on doing the outreach, the community involved. The youth pastors that I had helping me with First Priority in Tennessee very rarely were from smaller churches. They were normally from the larger churches. where the pastor, the senior pastor, was given the, hey, yes, you need to go and be involved in this. This is out there where the kids are, you need to be a part of it. Those were also the churches that we had no problem getting an opportunity to come in and speak to about what First Priority was doing when they would have a missions event or something like that going on. Right? So there's a lot of different statistics out there, and some of them are kind of disheartening to see, but I encourage you, if you don't look at the Lifeway research on a regular basis, go out and look at what some of these statistics show, because yes, some of it's disheartening, but one of the other things that you also see when you look through this is that while a lot of memberships are declining in a lot of areas, baptisms are actually starting to be back on the rise, right? So that tells me that if we're starting to see baptisms come up, we're starting to reach people again, we're starting to get out there. We just have to make sure that we keep going to where they are. I'm excited because Sunday I get to do 2 baptisms at Trinity Baptist Church. It's incredible. Only one of those is actually going to be a member of Trinity Baptist Church. The other baptism Sunday is a guy who's driving down from Shreveport, Louisiana to be baptized because he's a dear friend and somebody that I led to the Lord a few years ago, and we've been talking about him getting baptized. He and his wife were looking for a home church, but they haven't found one yet. He said, Kevin, I need to be baptized. I need to be baptized. I said, well, we can come do it on Catholic. We'll baptize you in the lake. He said, I want to do that eventually. He said, I need to come be baptized at church. And so while they've been searching for a home church, they've been attending online the Trinity Baptist for the past few months. And he said, I'd like to come be baptized at Trinity. I said, come on. So we don't have a normal baptism, so we're going to be doing it outside in the rain. We'll probably have to set the trough up on the sidewalk under the overhang so we can do it. But we see some of those things are happening the right way, right? We're starting to see some of those statistics that have been trending now for the last few years. In some places they're starting to come up. But if we're going to keep that momentum going, right, we've got to kind of change that mindset of let them come to us, and we've got to go to where the people are at, right? We've got to build those relationships, let our community know that we do care about them, that we are here for them, right? And through those relationships we build, we start seeing more opportunities to share the gospel. Yeah, Jim, what do you got?
Yeah, guys, it's scattered in our area,
Yeah.
but the opportunities are real. I know in Beaumont we've tried to. I try to shepherd by example, and so our family, we volunteer at a couple of Beaumont schools. One where my daughter teaches, Blanchette Elementary, and the other Caldwood Elementary, not far from here. And it's funny, we think of the school systems as being liberal-led and bastions of paganism, but they are hungry for volunteers. So I can roar, and I just discovered recently, GTBN helped start this program. But there's a program in Beaumont schools called ROAR that what they're begging for are people to show up and let children read to them. These are kids picked out because they're struggling with their reading. And so they take their AR books, their accelerated readers, and they're pulled out of class for half an hour. And you help them with the hard words, and you listen to them read, and you encourage them. And I'm thinking, if only there was an organization with a surplus of retired people with time on their hands that had the energy to show up and be friendly and let kids read. Here's what we've discovered. Yeah, I can't put a track in front of those kids. I can't share the gospel with those kids. But I become those teachers' hero in that moment. And so Karen and I are the 911 call for a lot of these educators at that school. And over time, God will use that. So we've got a Wiccan right now, Liz knows her, she connected us with her, that calls us to pray for her kids. And God is stirring in that. And so like in Beaumont, they are pleading and chaperone field trips and different things. And the kids get a supply list. Most of the things aren't for them. They're things the schools budget but don't. And you know, to adopt a school, there are some, even small churches full of nothing but elderly people, there are some ways. But what happens in that is, again, people see the church serving without asking for anything in return. And God uses that, and sometimes God uses that in a way that we don't necessarily, we can't even connect the dots. But like my friend in Washington, they see the church doing what the church should be doing. So what others are there around us? And in Mid-County, you guys have loads of stuff.
We do. Probably the most unique thing that we've done, we call fall festivals. Now reaching people. We spend thousands of dollars every year, countless man hours. And I took an idea from a community about an hour and a half away. And I said, this would make a lot more sense if the churches came together and partnered with civic organizations. So we talked to the Chamber of Commerce, and we now partner with the city. We're doing a fall festival on Port H Avenue instead of our parking lot.
Right.
And it's been very fruitful.
Yeah, that's great. I love really when I hear churches partnering with civic organizations in the community to reach the community, because that's one of the things that again, I don't know if it's that a lot of times as church leaders we haven't thought about going that route in a lot of areas, right? We kind of take that whole separation of church and state and apply it even at the local level. But the local level, in most areas I've seen government be very willing to be involved with local churches. How many of your churches are members of your local Chamber of Commerce? Yeah. So Orange County does and they do a monthly members breakfast for the Chamber of Commerce, right? Ours was this morning, and I show up to it. And what's great is at the end of that breakfast every month, what they do is everybody circles up, and you got 100+ people from around the community who are there, and we go around the room, and every organization there talks about what they have going on over the next couple of weeks. And so that's everything from car dealerships to insurance companies to equipment rental places, and then you got Pastor Kevin from Trinity Baptist Church stepping out and going, hey, we got a men's discipleship group that started meeting on Thursday nights. Love to have you come and join us, or tell your people to come and join us, right? And it's another way to get out there and get involved in the community and be seen that helps to build those relationships. What else do y'all have in your areas? There are ways that your church is building those relationships in the community.
Our church is more rural,
Mm-hmm.
and so we have one high school,
Right.
one middle school, that sort of thing. So for us, the connection is there. We have many events that are based in those sort of campuses and those sort of things. So that's been part of our strategy. But it's more, we're not like Orange or Beaumont. We kind of more rural. So those and then part of it is. Years ago, it used to be the church was the hub of the activity of the community, and that's changed. In our context, being that we're fairly rural, it can return to that if you are purposeful about it. And so that's part of what we're doing is we're starting we're allowing the Garland place to come on campus. They're a group that does adults with disabilities.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So they're going to be locating on our campus.
Awesome.
So becoming a hub for people to say, hey, we're caring about people who, have been forgotten about.
Right.
So that's kind of
That's great. Yeah. That's a great opportunity for the church to be doing under the lease of these, right? So.
Yeah, let me throw an idea out front, because many of you know we have the event trailer, which includes, we actually have two jump houses. So we've got a jump house you can get by itself, or the jump house with the trailer, which includes a grill, popcorn, snow cone machine, sound system, various carnival games. We don't have the simulated axe throwing yet, but
Not yet.
we're actually
working on it.
buying a series of 3 inflatable game pieces to go with that. But imagine, your schools will have your carnival at the end of the year, or sometimes at Halloween, and what if you said, hey, what if our church provides that and we will run it so that your teachers can have fun with their kids and get to know their parents? And the school will take you up on that. And so, no, that's there. You don't have to just use that trailer for the event at your church. And again, you become the hero, you build that bridge to them. That's their, you guys heard, most of you, I think, we do Halloween different because we don't do it as a church thing. But I've encouraged churches to, instead of do Fall Fest at their church, get a handful of members to do this. Because here's what we do. Every October 31st, 200 strangers come to my house and I free candy. Doesn't matter if my lights on or not. And it's about 30 minutes. So we take that jump house and we set it up and we grill hot dogs. Liz has some games out there. And we have turned about 25% of them come get their candy, still about 30-second visit. But about 175 of those 200 give us 15 minutes or more. All the kids would jump in that jump house and eat their hot dog. And we've had great conversations. And at least one family has plugged into one of our local churches. As a result of that, we are the 911 for a bunch of those families. You know, we're not sure, we don't know what the end harvest is going to be, but there are incredible connections from that. And again, if you wanted something out of the box to talk to your people, hey, could you get 4 or 5 of your people, to do that? And then let's take our members instead of going at church, help out those families. Because when I do it, if I'm cooking hot dogs, I need somebody to visit with those people and help those conversations along. But there are all kinds of things. What else? What do you guys, out of Little Cypress, what are the connecting points?
So, of course, we do the Fall Festival, all those common things. For me personally, I'm usually in the middle school there at Little Cypress. I've gone to high school a few times, spoke at their Coast for Christ, or they're very believers and things like that. See if the Bull's a big outreach opportunity. So I make sure to go there. We have the school event. During Christmas they have like a bear market or something like that. We have gone out there with the Little Cypress tent up, and we were making barbecue and talking to people. Unfortunately, the side effect is the school made us go at the very back of the parking lot. So, but we were still able to talk and have some conversations with a few people that were parking in the back of the parking lot, right? It's like there's people who are late getting here, parking's full, you're ours, right? But we've done some things like that. And of course, Brother David and our outreach team, they're big on door knocking still. So of course they're doing that every Monday.
And door knocking still works to an extent. It's harder now, right? Because everybody's got that Ring door cam, and so when somebody comes up to the door that they don't know, they're either going to ignore you or tell you to go away. So it does make it harder. But there are still people who will answer the door and have those conversations with you. If it didn't work at all, the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses would have stopped doing it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's still a viable option for getting in front of people.
There are some things that me and my wife have brought up to members of our church, trying to get them involved, getting the volunteers to do it. But that's like going out summertime, you got all the sports, going out there handing out some fruit slices or water. But it's we're throwing those community outreach opportunities, and we're trying to get some of the people in our church to think outreach is more than just knocking on the door, right? And so now we're looking for those volunteers.
So let me put something out there. In fact, I'm going to have my ministry assistant unpack it a little bit. There has been a vision that has been burning on her heart for a couple of years that nobody seems to catch up on. We found one church, when they did church planter assessment, that was doing it.
Which thing?
The garden thing.
Oh, yeah.
But because, if only, imagine if you had an organization with people who loved gardening and had that skill, like almost all our old folks. So,
Where to start? We are surrounded by an area, and all of our areas, everyone here included, has some capacity of a food desert of some kind in your areas. There are people who, especially right now in this moment in time in our history, want to be able to at least grow something to provide for themselves in some way, to feel like I could do this if I had to do this. It's very big all over everything right now, but even before, it's like a lot of people don't have the capacity to do it. They don't know where to start. They don't know. And we have churches that have a sickeningly amount of grass that you have to pay to maintain all the time, like all year long. And it doesn't have to be expensive to put in, but I've always thought it would be so cool to be able to offer a community garden or an allotment style, kind of like they do in the UK. And the way they do that is they have sections out. You can do different kinds of beds if you want to, but you have a section and you're like, okay, a family can say, pay in $30, and this year, this is your section. You can do whatever you want. You decide if you want to be organic or not, and those are like the constraints. But other than that, this is yours. And we're going to have people from our church out here on this day every single week or every other week to help maintain stuff and to help teach you. And that's where, you know, your retirees or anyone who's just into gardening come in. But you just have a space and like, this is yours. You can plant whatever you want. We even have people on this time dedicated. There will be someone here to meet with you.
You can't plant anything illegal or might be legal.
Yeah, you can't grow pot.
Yeah.
Don't edible food is good.
Yeah.
Edible food is preferable. But it is so easy to section out sites. People are dying for opportunities like this. They're dying for this connection. They're dying for this, and you have grass that you won't have to maintain as much.
Yeah.
So it's very beneficial, and just trying to, I'm actually working with a group in Kuntz, not through one of the churches, but through our local 4-H program. We just secured a $5,000 grant to do this, and we were able to do it on a church property. We ended up not doing it on that, but the grant was allowed for even that. So there's money out there for this. You don't have to spend a dime. You just have to have people willing to be like, hey, I'm going to be here for this. Now, our first year, we're just going to do it, our little 4-H group, and inviting people in as we grow. That way we can get a handle on it. But eventually, we would love to have an allotment option. Have people say, I want this garden bed, and I'm going to do stuff, and we're going to be out here on these dates. But the whole thing is, when you're there and like you're providing something that they want or need in this capacity, you also build those relationships through that. And eventually they're like, you know what, I'm having a really hard time, but I know someone's going to be here on Tuesday at this time. I'm going to go talk with them.
Yeah.
And that opens up so many doors. And all the grass, guys, we have too much grass. We need to use some of that.
Because it's not just a one-off, they come to your fall fest, either they get the gospel or they don't, but now they're coming to learn gardening, and they're coming every week to the grow season.
And worse comes to worse, and they never show up again. Guess what? You got tomatoes. Awesome. Share it with someone else. Oh, darn. You have salsa.
And you know, along the lines of the community garden, I think everybody realizes that sourdough has become a big thing again, right?
Oh, yeah.
And like sourdough is everywhere. One of the ladies in our church who is kind of nuts about sourdough is actually going to be doing an event. It's going to be at our church, but she's going to be doing an event in May. We're going to make open to the community that, hey, if you want to be able to make sourdough at home, right? You're interested in this, but you've had no idea how to do it, where to start. There's 50,000 results on the internet for it. You don't know which one to pick. Come and be a part of this, right? We're calling it Rise. Is the name of the event. But come and be a part of this. She's going to teach them how to do it. Everybody who shows up is going to get a sourdough starter that she's had going for like 10 years. Right? But then she's also going to provide them, not necessarily with the church contact information, but with her contact info. That way, when somebody has a mistake in the middle of their sourdough process, or something happens they can't figure it out, they can reach back out to her and say, hey, Jennifer, I was here at this event, met you, we were doing this, I'm struggling with this, and I don't know, I can't figure it out, it's frustrating me, I want to quit, because it's too much effort, whatever, and she can have that conversation and continue those relationships that are started at that event. And so, yeah, things like community gardens, I've seen those at some churches in Tennessee that are great. It's just, we just got to be willing to think a little bit outside of the box of what we've done before, because again, the institutional distrust is at an all-time high for the church. It doesn't matter the denomination, right? But it's at an all-time high, and so We've got to be able to show people that we care and that, hey, yes, the church is full of people who are sinners and do stupid stuff and make mistakes, but it's also full of people who care about you. And don't, yes, we care about where you're going to spend eternity, but we also care about you right now in this moment.
You were talking about people in your church and how to teach them to go. One of the things that, and I'm getting ready to launch, it's not launched yet, but I'll give it to y'all just the same. You were talking about gardens. There's everyone in your church has something that they do.
Yes.
It could be knitting, whatever it be. So my thinking is to offer those things periodically, community-wise, and being able to say, we're having this knitting group, we're having this gardening class, we're having how to change your oil, just whatever it be. Knife making, a guy in the church makes knives. Why don't you come talk to the people about making knives? There's probably people out there in the community that want to know about making knives. And so that's part of giving people the tools and the opportunities to make those connections. Pre-evangelism, call it what you will, I don't care. But helping people make those connections. That's part of what I was talking, and actually came out of our young adult class, because in educational psychology we learn that adults are needs-based learners. We don't want to, I'm not going to learn something I don't need to know. But if I want to know it, then I'm going to go seek that out. And there's a great distrust with the AI and Googling things online now. But if you have a trusted person who's an expert in the matter, that's more. So that's part of something you have.
Well, the other part of it, we've been nagging members for years, trying to get them to do something they don't want to do.
And teaching them to talk to their spiritual.
Well, but what if you help them take what they have a love for and show them how God can use what they love for His purpose. And now you're not dragging them, kicking and screaming, because they love to share about this and that and the other. So help tie their love for the Lord Jesus to their love for those pieces.
Well, and to that is their spiritual. That it's not unspiritual to be a mechanic.
That's
right.
right. That is right. Exactly.
So say and empower that and say this is what.
That's right.
This is God's
My wife asks me all the time why I have to buy more fishing gear, and I tell her it's because I use fishing as an evagelism tool, and so I gotta have the things I need to go and reach people. And that's I love that, because there's so many people who are sitting in the church and they're going, I have nothing to offer, right? I'm not a teacher, I'm not a speaker, I can't do this, I can't do this. What do I have to offer? And you can preach to them spiritual gifts all day long, and for most of them, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. But when you can say, hey, you know what? You're good at baking, or you're good at you're good at just cooking in general, right? And we've got people who want to know how to do that, and they want to know the desire for people to care for their families seems to be growing more now than it has in probably the past 30 years, because everybody's in that apocalypse mindset, right? So, okay, if we know that that's where people are, how do we say, okay, we know you're here, we want to respond and help you and fill that need by teaching you how to cook, how to knit, right? When I was talking about the relationships we're building with the black churches in Orange, as I've been talking with these pastors, the thing that I told them is, look, I'm not wanting to have us do some Sunday worship where we come together, kumbaya, and the only people that are really enjoy it and are happy with it are the pastors, right? Because everybody else is sitting there going, this is weird, they're not like us. What I want is hey, you've got ladies in your church who sew or knit or crochet or cross stitch. We've got ladies who do the same thing. Let's bring them together and let's have a weekend where these ladies come together and they make some blankets. And then we take those blankets and we go to the Salvation Army, or we go to Orange Christian Services or somewhere else and say, these are from some churches in the community to fill a need. Right? Tangible ways that we can come together as believers to reach the lost and dying and the hurting in our community. Right?
I was just, you were saying something about VBS, and cost-wise, things like that, but I know that one church where they were thinking about doing away, and that was almost a civil war.
Oh,
You get these little old ladies, and that is their thing.
Yeah.
And that's their spiritual gift. VBS.
Yeah.
That's what they do, and don't cross that
Oh,
line.
look, I love VBS.
I mean, yeah, this, you know,
We're really
like-
good at VBS. What I try to caution people against is don't rely on that. Don't
Oh, no, no,
rely
no,
on
no.
those special
Yeah.
events to be what's gonna bring
That's
new
what
members into your church,
people-
because that's where you start getting disappointed, and that's where you have people start questioning that return on investment.
I'm saying, they love that
Yeah.
stuff.
What we've done, and it's been fairly effective, we started it last year with the community band, and we're gonna be expanding the kind of the idea. But there's a community band that meets at our church, and they wanna meet there, and we don't charge them. But how can we use them to bring people in the door that wouldn't normally be? So we took that group and asked them to come to one of our events, and so now we're bringing in, and so we're leveraging.
Yeah.
And so this year, one of my goals, I don't know if it'll happen yet, one of my goals is to take our trunk or treat, and we're always begging for people to, why, I don't know, we're always begging for trunks. And I'm like, well, what if we had a car club come
Yeah.
and had a car show there?
Yeah.
And that became our trunk or treat, and we just had members beside cars, and as people are walking past, we don't have to do anything, we just show up. So it's kind of, I'm thinking about that's been our strategy, is how do I take something that's an established thing, I can't get rid of it because they will crucify me in the front hall of the church.
Oh, they will, yeah.
But if I can leverage it to actually be impactful, rather than just kind of
Well, and here's a question, like, it's so hard to get someone, you're like, okay, I'm gonna drag you along, we've gotta go evangelize and do this event. How hard is it to get you to talk about fishing, Ben?
I don't know.
How hard is it to talk to you about fishing? All you guys, what are y'all interested in? How
Right,
hard is it to
exactly.
get you to talk about that? Find what your people that you want to bring alongside for these things are interested in.
Yeah.
Make it easy, because it is easy.
And the other part of it is, especially when we think of the events of the church, is understand what the goal is. So everything we do with a large group really accomplishes one person. It gets a safe person and a lost person connected. You need to understand this is a marathon, and you need to be able to capitalize. So often we do events and activities, and we discover a lot of lost people, and then church members get mad because they don't show up to get saved the following Sunday. And we don't do anything beyond that until maybe they show up for the next event. And so, what is your second step? So now that you know these people, how are you going to engage that relationship and be God's instrument in their lives for what He's doing there? And so we think about the event, and we pump money into the event, and we have that. And look, sometimes we do events and we don't even get information.
Or we get fake information.
Or we get fake, yeah.
I've had that. They gave me an address that was an empty lot.
But so when we get that, what is our next step? And it may be 2 or 3 events. It may be just get them to be a repeat to the next thing that we have. But then how do we want to engage and carry this relationship to the next level? Because it is only as that trust and that relationship grows that you're really going to have an opportunity to be God's influence in their lives.
And one thing I know we've struggled with previously with some of these out-of-the-box thinking ways is, Jesus told us to go make disciples. He didn't tell us to make numbers for our Sunday school or church Sunday classes. Like, that is not, we're not called, I know, to grow butts and seats. We're called to make disciples. And so sometimes you're going to put a lot of effort into people, and they're never going to step foot in your church. But praise God that He's going to use that for something, and those seeds are planted, because that's what we're called to do. And eventually, you will see that growth. You will see it coming, because God is faithful to do what He says He's going to do. And so we have to, teach the people that we're discipling, like, look, this isn't going to end up on our bottom line for church this year. It may not even end up on our bottom line for church ever, but we're doing what God called us to do. And if we're faithful to do that, He'll be faithful to take care of us.
One of the this is the craziest things that I've ever done. Afghanistan, me and my brigade chaplain decided to start up a cigar smokers fellowship.
Yeah.
We didn't think it was, we thought, we were just kicking around, it's like, well, you like smoking cigars, yeah, there's a lot of guys who like smoking cigars. Let's have a Bible study. So we put it out there, And we started out with about five guys, five guys and a couple girls. They were all smoking stogies.
There you
So
go.
now older from what I hear.
Yeah, we smoked our stogies, and then, because we can get advantage out there. too.
Yeah.
And then it started growing. It was really kind of interesting. I mean, we're in senior leadership. There's a start. It's like, well, we're here to smoke stogie, you know, and to talk. And then we're going to do a little Bible study at the end. And it just started growing and growing and growing. And we thought, well, that was one of the most harebrained things we ever thought could happen. But you know, we were meeting these guys where they were at.
And that's, look, I heard a pastor say years and years ago that if we are truly going to be effective for the kingdom, we have got to be willing to burn our toes because we're reaching the very pits of hell to pull people out, right? And a lot of times we don't want to do that, right? Because to do that, you got to get dirty.